The manila envelope felt heavier than it should as I set it down on the kitchen counter. Inside were the deed transfers, the bank statements, the proof of 12 years of careful generosity, 12 years of silence, 12 years of pretending I didn't understand every single word. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Masyadong dependent sa kanya. My mother-in-law's voice drifted from the living room, sharp and disapproving. Too dependent on him. Wala siyang ambag sa pamilya. She contributes nothing to the family. I continued chopping vegetables for dinner, my knife moving in steady, practiced rhythms against the cutting board. The sound masked my understanding, just as it had for over a decade. My husband Marco had insisted early in our relationship that I didn't need to learn Tagalog. "You're American, babe. My family understands English well enough." What he meant was, "I want to keep secrets from you in your own home." "Si Dayan talaga," his father added, his tone heavy with manufactured pity. "That Diane. Nakakahiya na. Walang career, walang savings. Buti na lang may Marco." It's embarrassing now. No career, no savings. Good thing there's Marco. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so perfectly orchestrated. I was Diane Chen Martinez, daughter of Chinese immigrants who'd built a quiet fortune in commercial real estate development. I'd learned Tagalog in college, fascinated by the language and culture. I'd become fluent during a 2-year architecture fellowship in Manila, where I'd fallen in love with the city's blend of Spanish colonial history and modern innovation. That fellowship had launched my career. It had also taught me something valuable. People reveal their true selves when they think you can't understand them. "Gumagamit lang sa kanya." Marco's voice joined the chorus now, lower but just as cutting. "She's just using him. Para sa green card, para sa lifestyle. You know how these American-born Chinese are. They think they're better than everyone." I placed the knife down carefully, my hands steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through my veins. This wasn't the first conversation of this type. It wasn't even the 10th. But it was the one I'd been waiting for, the one where all the pieces finally aligned. Before we begin this journey together, I want to thank you for being here. If these stories speak to you, consider subscribing. It helps us continue bringing you narratives of truth and empowerment. Now, let's continue. The dinner I was preparing was special. Adobo, the way Marco's grandmother had made it, with extra bay leaves and a splash of coconut vinegar. Pancit palabok with homemade sauce. Lumpia that I'd rolled myself that afternoon. His mother's favorite dishes, all made from recipes I'd learned by watching her, by memorizing every movement while she'd spoken about me in her native language, assuming I couldn't comprehend her words. "Dapat talaga mag-divorce na siya." His younger sister Carmela chimed in. "He should really get divorced. Start fresh with someone na may silbi, someone na may class, someone useful, someone who has class." I'd met Marco at an industry conference in Seattle 13 years ago. I'd been 26, fresh from my Manila fellowship, my portfolio bursting with innovative designs that were beginning to attract attention. He'd been 28, charming, working as a mid-level project manager at a commercial development firm. He'd approached me at the hotel bar, his smile easy, his confidence magnetic. "You're Diane Chen," he'd said, sliding onto the bar stool next to me. "I heard your presentation on sustainable high-density housing. Revolutionary stuff." We'd talked for hours. He'd seemed genuinely interested in my work, my ideas, my vision for changing how we thought about urban spaces. When he'd kissed me goodnight, I'd felt something I'd been too busy to feel before. Possibility. Our courtship had been a whirlwind. He'd pursued me relentlessly, showing up at my office with coffee, remembering small details about my projects, supporting my long hours. When he'd proposed after 8 months, standing on the rooftop of a building I'd designed, I'd said yes without hesitation. The first red flag had been small, his insistence that we keep our finances separate. "I'm traditional that way," he'd explained. "I want to provide for you, not have you worry about money." It had seemed sweet at the time, almost feminist in its own way. He didn't want to control my earnings. What I didn't realize was that he'd assumed I didn't have any. "Tingnan mo yung sapatos niya," his mother continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "Look at her shoes. Mga cheap na brand, nakakahiya para kay Marco." Cheap brands. Embarrassing for Marco. The shoes in question were vintage Ferragamo, purchased at an estate sale for a fraction of their value. I'd learned early from my mother that true wealth whispered. It never shouted. My engagement ring was a simple gold band with a small diamond. My choice, despite Marco's protests that he wanted to get me something bigger, something that showed what you mean to me. The watch I wore was my grandmother's, a 1960s Omega that looked modest but was worth more than the car Marco drove. Everything about my appearance was calculated to look modest, understated, forgettable. It was a armor I'd built carefully, piece by piece. "Sabi ng kaibigan ko sa bank," Marco said now, his voice taking on the tone he used when sharing gossip, "na decline daw ang credit card application niya last month." My friend at the bank says her credit card application was declined last month. That was true. I'd applied for a rewards card under my married name, knowing it would be declined because I kept no credit history under Martinez. Every account, every asset, every investment remained under Chen, my maiden name, the name on my professional license, the name that appeared on the deed to the house we lived in. The house Marco believed he'd helped me afford with his contribution of $2,000 a month. The house that had cost $2.3 million, paid in cash, from my own accounts. "Kawawa naman si Marco," his father sighed. "Poor Marco. Ang hirap ng buhay niya. His life is so difficult. Nag-aalaga pa sa asawang walang kwenta. Still taking care of a useless wife." I turned off the stove. The adobo finished simmering, its rich aroma filling the kitchen. Through the doorway, I could see them gathered in the living room. My husband, his parents, his sister, his younger brother Rafael, who'd arrived from the Philippines last week. A family meeting, Marco had called it. Important family matters to discuss. They didn't know I'd called this meeting myself, working through Marco's sister with carefully planted suggestions, gentle manipulations that made her think it was her idea to gather everyone together. They didn't know that the envelope on the counter contained more than just papers. It contained the truth of 12 years. "Dinner's ready," I called out in English, my voice light and cheerful, playing the role I'd perfected. "I made all your favorites, Tita." I used the respectful term for his mother, as I always had. They filed into the dining room, Marco's mother barely glancing at me, his father checking his phone. Carmela sat down with a heavy sigh, as if the effort of eating my cooking was a burden she bore nobly. Raphael, the youngest and least venomous of the family, gave me a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Marco kissed my cheek as he passed, a performative gesture of affection. "Smells great, babe. You really outdid yourself." In Tagalog, his mother muttered to his father, "Pag-uwi, kakain tayo ng totoo. When we get home, we'll eat real food." I smiled and began serving, placing generous portions on each plate. The pancit glistened under the chandelier, the Murano glass chandelier I'd had shipped from Venice. Though Marco believed it was a reproduction from a home goods store. The table itself was solid mahogany, custom-made by a craftsman in North Carolina, though I'd let Marco think it was a lucky find at an estate sale. "So," Marco said, settling into his chair at the head of the head of my table, in my house. "Dad, Mom, I wanted you all here because we need to discuss some things about Diane and me." My heart rate remained steady. This was it. The moment I'd been engineering for the past 3 months. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Things haven't been great, he continued, reaching for his water glass. And I think it's time we were honest about the situation. Tungkol sa pera? His mother asked. About money? Ang hirap na ba? Is it difficult now? Yeah, about money, Marco said in English, glancing at me with what he probably thought was a sympathetic expression. Among other things, I took a sip of my own water, waiting. I'd become good at waiting, at watching, at collecting information. In my work as an architect, patience was essential. You couldn't rush a good design, couldn't force a vision into being before all the elements aligned. The same principle applied here. The thing is, Marco continued, I've been supporting us basically alone for years now, and it's becoming unsustainable. Sabi ko na, his sister interjected. I told you so. Dapat hindi mo pinakasalan yan. You shouldn't have married her. English, Carm, Marco said mildly. It's rude. Carmela rolled her eyes but complied. I'm just saying. We all saw this coming. She's never had a real job, never contributed anything meaningful. You've been carrying the entire weight of this marriage. I let the words wash over me, my expression carefully arranged into one of hurt confusion. Marco, what is this? What's happening? He had the grace to look uncomfortable at least. Look, Diane, you're a good person, but we need to be realistic. You haven't worked a consistent job in years. Your little design hobby doesn't bring in any real income. I've been paying for everything. The mortgage, the bills, your shopping, your car. My design hobby, I repeated softly, as if wounded. Inside, I was calculating, adjusting, preparing. The work I do from home is consulting. His father interrupted in English, his accent heavy. You call it consulting. But who pays you? Where is the money? I have clients, I said, my voice smaller now, more uncertain. I told you, Marco. I work with who? Marco leaned forward, his expression a mix of pity and frustration. Diane, I've never seen a single paycheck, not one. In 12 years of marriage, you've never shown me any proof of income. Because you said we should keep finances separate, I reminded him, letting a tremor enter my voice. You said you wanted to be the provider. Hindi niya maintindihan, his mother said to his father, not even bothering to lower her voice. She doesn't understand. Ang kapal ng mukha. Such thick face, an expression meaning shameless. Pinapakain natin siya, pinatitira sa bahay, at ngayon gusto pang mag-claim na may ambag. We feed her, let her stay in the house, and now she still wants to claim she contributes. The house. My house. The house I'd purchased 3 years before I even met Marco, during my first major success as an architect. The house whose deed sat in a safety deposit box under my maiden name, along with every other document that told the true story of my life. I think, Marco said, his tone becoming more formal, more rehearsed. We need to consider separation, maybe even divorce. There it was. The words I'd been waiting to hear, the culmination of months of watching him with his secretary, the young Filipino woman from his office who thought herself clever and discreet. The culmination of watching him siphon money into a separate account he thought I didn't know about, preparing for his escape from what he considered an anchor around his neck. Divorce? I whispered, right on cue. Marco, no, please. I love you. I can do better. I can... Dapat lang, Carmela said firmly. It's only right. Hindi ka naman karapat-dapat sa kanya. You're not worthy of him anyway. Rafael, who'd been quiet through all of this, finally spoke up. This seems harsh, he said in English, directing his words at Marco. Maybe counseling first? This is marriage, Kuya. It's not something to throw away so easily. Stay out of it, Raf, Marco said shortly. You don't understand the full situation. You don't know what I've been dealing with. What you've been dealing with? I let my voice rise slightly, let some authentic anger seep through. I've stood by you for 12 years. I've supported your career, entertained your colleagues, taken care of your family. My family? His mother's voice cut through like a blade, speaking English now, her words sharp with offense. What have you done for my family? Nothing. You give us nothing. Marco sends money home every month. Marco pays for everything. You? You are burden. Leeching off my son. The money Marco sends home. Every month, without fail, $5,000 wired to a bank account in Manila. Money he told me was for his parents' expenses, for medical care, for helping his extended family. Money I knew went into investment accounts and property purchases, building his parents' quiet wealth while I played the penniless dependent. Tita, I started. Don't call me Tita, she snapped. You don't deserve to use family name. You bring shame. No job, no respect, no contribution. What kind of wife are you? I looked down at my plate, at the food I'd spent hours preparing, and made a decision. The decision I'd been building toward. The moment I'd been constructing since the day I'd overheard Marco on the phone with his mother, 3 months ago, laughing about how I thought I was part of the family. You're right, I said quietly. We should talk about contributions, about money, about who's been supporting who. Supporting who? Marco laughed, the sound bitter. Diane, come on. You can't seriously think. I think, I interrupted, my voice still soft but now carrying an edge, that before we continue this conversation, everyone should see something. I stood and walked to the counter, retrieving the manila envelope I'd placed there earlier. The weight of it felt right now, felt powerful. 12 years of secrets about to spill across the dinner table like water breaching a dam. What's this? Marco asked, suspicion creeping into his tone. Documentation, I said simply, returning to my seat. Since we're talking about money and contributions, I thought everyone should have the facts. I opened the envelope and began removing papers, spreading them across the table like cards in a game of poker. Bank statements, property deeds, tax returns, investment portfolios. Each document told a story, and together, they told the truth. This, I said, placing the first document in front of Marco, is the deed to this house. As you can see, it's in my name. Chen, not Martinez. I purchased it in cash in 2011, 2 years before we met. Marco's face went pale. He picked up the paper, his eyes scanning the text as if he could will the words to rearrange themselves. This, I continued, placing another document in front of his mother, is my professional license. I'm not a hobby designer. I'm a licensed architect with my own firm, Chen Design Associates, established in 2010. This is... You said you did consulting, Marco stammered. Small projects, freelance work. I do consulting, I agreed, for major commercial developments across the West Coast. These, I laid out several more papers, are contracts from the past year alone. The Harbor District renovation in Seattle, the mixed-use development in Portland, the sustainable housing project in San Francisco. Total value of projects, $847 million. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Even the sound of breathing seemed suspended. This, I said, my voice steady, controlled, is my personal financial statement, current liquid assets, not including real estate or investments, $8.2 million. Carmela made a small, choking sound. Raphael's eyes had gone wide, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. And these, I said, placing a final stack of papers in the center of the table, are wire transfer records, 12 years of transfers, to a property management company in Manila, For the purchase and maintenance of a 3-bedroom condo in Makati, the condo where your parents live. I looked directly at Marco, then at his mother and father. Rent-free, for 12 years. Ano? His mother's voice was barely a whisper. What? The retirement home you've been living in? I said, and for the first time, I spoke in Tagalog. My accent perfect, my tone clear. Ako ang bumili. I bought it. Ako ang nagbabayad ng lahat. I pay for everything. The shock on their faces was exquisite. His mother's hand went to her throat. His father's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Carmela looked like she might faint. You speak Tagalog? Marco's voice cracked on the last word. Fluently, I said, switching back to English. I studied it in college. I worked in Manila for 2 years. I've understood every single word you've all said about me, in this house, for 12 years. Dios ko, his mother breathed. My God. Every insult, I continued, my voice gaining strength. Every mocking comment. Every time you called me useless or a burden or a leech. I heard it all. I understood it all. And I said nothing. Diane. Marco reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I don't understand. Why would you let us think? Because I wanted to see who you really were, I said simply. All of you. I wanted to see what you would do, what you would say, when you thought I couldn't understand, when you thought I had nothing, when you thought I needed you. I stood, walking to the window that overlooked the garden, my garden, professionally landscaped, maintained by a service I paid for. The money you send to your parents every month, Marco? The $5,000 you told me was such a burden? That's exactly half of what I've been sending for the condo fees, property taxes, and maintenance. I've been matching every dollar you sent, and adding more besides. The condo, his father said weakly, speaking English now. You said it was from the church, from the charity foundation. The Chen Family Foundation, I confirmed. My family's foundation. My father established it 30 years ago. I'm the director. The charity that's been supporting you is me. It's always been me. Raphael laughed suddenly, a sharp, almost hysterical sound. This is insane. Kuya. Did you know any of this? Of course I didn't know. Marco's face had gone from pale to flushed, anger and humiliation warring in his expression. She lied. She's been lying for 12 years. I never lied, I corrected calmly. I never once said I was poor. I never said I needed your support. You all simply assumed. And I let you assume because I wanted to see what you would do with that assumption. This is manipulation, Carmela said, finding her voice. This is sick. What kind of person does this? The kind of person who learned young that people show their true faces when they think you have nothing to offer, I said. My mother taught me that. She watched my father's business partners abandon him during a rough year, watched supposed friends disappear. When the money came back, so did they. So she taught me to be careful. To watch. To wait. This is crazy, Marco said, standing abruptly. You can't just... You've been spying on us, on my family, recording our conversations. I haven't recorded anything, I said. I didn't need to. I just listened and learned. His mother spoke now, her voice trembling. All these years, nagmura kami sayo. We cursed at you. Nagmukha kaming mga tanga. We looked like fools. You looked like exactly who you are, I said gently, switching back to Tagalog. People who judge others by their bank accounts. People who measure worth in dollars and designer labels. You had no right, Marco said, his voice rising. No right to trick us like this, to make fools of us in our own... He stopped, looking around at the house. In your house? No, I agreed. I suppose I didn't. Just like you had no right to mock me, belittle me, plan to divorce me so you could run off with your secretary. Yes, Marco, I know about Christina, while still living off the generosity you didn't know you were receiving. His face went white again. How did you— I'm not stupid, I said. I'm not useless. I'm not any of the things you've spent years telling yourself I am. I'm successful, I'm educated, I'm fluent in 3 languages, and I'm very, very patient. I gathered the papers back into the envelope, my movements precise. I wanted to have this conversation tonight because I'm done. Done with the pretense. Done with playing small to make you feel big. Done with listening to people insult me in a language they think I can't understand. So what now? Raphael asked quietly. He alone seemed more thoughtful than shocked, more curious than angry. What happens now? Now, I said. We're honest. Completely honest. Marco wants a divorce? Fine. We'll divorce. But he'll leave this marriage with exactly what he brought into it: his clothes, his car, and his own debts. You can't do that, Carmela protested. California is a community property state. He's entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. Everything acquired under the name Martinez, I agreed. Which is nothing. This house predates our marriage. My firm predates our marriage. My investments, my accounts, my properties. All in my maiden name, all protected. The only thing we share is a joint checking account with about $5,000 in it. He can have half. This is theft, his father said, his voice hard now, angry. You stole from my son. Made him think he was providing. I stole nothing, I interrupted. I accepted his contributions. $2,000 a month for household expenses. For 12 years, that's $288,000. I can write him a check right now if he'd like to consider it a loan repaid. The number hung in the air. It was substantial, yes, but it was nothing compared to the value of what I'd actually provided. The house alone had appreciated to over $3 million. The cars in the garage, the furniture, the art, the lifestyle they'd all enjoyed while thinking I was the burden. Namen, his mother said finally, the word heavy with betrayal and shame. It was an expression of frustration, of disappointment, impossible to translate directly. Back it. Why? Because I needed to know, I said simply, switching back to English so everyone could understand. I needed to know if I married a man who loved me, or a man who loved the idea of being my savior. I needed to know if his family would accept me for who I am, or only for what they thought I could take from their son. You already knew the answer, Raphael said quietly. You knew years ago. So why stay? Why keep up the act? It was a good question, the best question anyone had asked all evening. Because I hoped I was wrong, I admitted. Because I kept thinking, maybe next year, maybe next month, maybe tomorrow, they'll see me. Really see me. Not my bank account, not my job, not my usefulness. Just me. The person who loves their son. The person who cooks their favorite meals and learns their language and sends money to support them while pretending to be poor so they won't feel ashamed. That's not love, Marco said bitterly. That's a science experiment. We were rats in your maze. No, I said firmly. You were people I gave every chance to be kind without incentive, to be loving without profit, to treat me with respect when you thought I had nothing worth respecting. And you failed. All of you except Raphael. I nodded to the youngest brother, who'd rarely joined in the mockery. You failed consistently and completely. I walked to the door, picking up my purse from the hall table. I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow I'll have my lawyer contact you, Marco, about divorce proceedings. They'll be quick and equitable according to actual law, not your interpretation of it. The condo, his father said suddenly. In Manila. What happens to it? I paused, considering. That depends on you. The foundation owns it, and I direct the foundation. I could sell it. I could donate it to actual charity. Or, I looked at his mother, at the fear and shame and anger warring in her face. I could continue to let you live there, if you can learn to be honest, if you can learn that my generosity wasn't weakness, and your cruelty wasn't strength. Diane, Marco's voice stopped me at the door. I did love you. I do love you. I turned back, studying the man I'd married. He looked smaller now, diminished not by any action of mine, but by the revelation of his own smallness. You loved what I let you believe you were, I said softly. The provider, the strong one, the savior of the poor, struggling woman. But that was never real. I was never that woman. Then who are you? He asked, and he sounded genuinely lost. I smiled, sad and tired, and finally free. I'm Diane Chen, I said. Architect, entrepreneur, daughter, and as of tonight, your ex-wife. I closed the door behind me, leaving behind the sound of shocked silence and the remains of the dinner no one had eaten. The adobo would go cold on the plates. The pancit would congeal. The carefully prepared food would go to waste, just like 12 years of marriage built on assumptions and lies of omission. My car, a modest Honda I'd driven for years, never bothering to replace despite being able to afford any vehicle I wanted, started with its familiar rumble. I sat in the driveway of my own house, looking at the warm lights in the windows, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner Maya, who'd known about tonight's plan. How did it go? I typed back. The truth is out. Finally. 3 dots appeared. Then. Good. You coming to the office tomorrow? We have the San Jose presentation. Right. The San Jose project, a $200 million mixed-use development that would transform 3 city blocks. My design, my vision, my work that Marco had dismissed as a hobby. I'll be there, I typed. Wouldn't miss it. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Through the window, I could see them still sitting at the table, frozen in the wreckage of their assumptions. Part of me felt guilty for the deception, for the years of pretense. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful for the clarity. Grateful for learning exactly who would stand by me when they thought I had nothing. Grateful for finding out that the man I'd married loved an illusion, not a person. And grateful that I had the resources, the independence, and the strength to walk away. The hotel I checked into was one I'd designed 5 years ago, a boutique property in downtown Seattle with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop garden. The night manager recognized me immediately. Ms. Chen, we didn't have you on the schedule tonight. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, David, I assured him. Just needed a change of scenery. Do you have the corner suite available? For you? Always? The suite was beautiful. I'd designed it to be a sanctuary, never imagining I'd need it as one myself. I ordered room service, poured a glass of wine from my personal bottle that the hotel kept stocked, and sat by the window looking out at the city lights. My phone rang. Raphael. I hope you don't mind, he said when I answered. I got your number from the papers you left. The business cards. I don't mind, I said. What can I do for you, Raphael? I wanted to apologize, he said quietly. I should have said something. All those times they talked about you, I should have defended you. I didn't, and I'm sorry. You were never cruel, I pointed out. That's more than the others can say. I was complicit by silence, he said. That's its own kind of cruelty. Look, I know you probably don't want anything to do with any of us after tonight, but I wanted you to know what you did was brilliant. Harsh, maybe, but brilliant. They needed to see themselves clearly. Thank you, I said, surprised by how much his words meant. That helps. For what it's worth, he added, I think my brother's an idiot. If someone loved me enough to take care of my entire family while letting me think I was the one doing the providing, I'd fall to my knees in gratitude, not plan a divorce. I laughed, the sound catching in my throat. You're young yet, Raphael. Don't be too hard on your brother. He's a product of expectations. The oldest son, the provider, the one who had to be strong. It's hard to maintain that image when you discover your wife never needed you to be strong for her. Maybe she needed him to be strong with her, Raphael said. Not for her, with her. Wise words from the youngest member of the family. Maybe so, I agreed. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness, finishing my wine and thinking about the road ahead. Divorce proceedings, business as usual at the firm. Perhaps, eventually, dating again, though this time with full transparency. With no games or tests or protection through pretense. My phone buzzed again. Marco this time. I let it go to voicemail, then another call, and another. Finally, a text. We need to talk, please. There's so much to explain. But there wasn't, really. Everything had already been explained in the most honest way possible, through actions over years, through words spoken when they thought I couldn't understand, through choices made when they believed no one was watching. I set my phone to silent and went to bed in the suite I'd designed, in the hotel I'd helped create, secure in the knowledge that when morning came, I would wake up as exactly who I'd always been, Diane Chen, architect, businesswoman, and finally, truthfully, myself. Tomorrow would bring complications, legal discussions, property divisions, the awkward dance of disentangling a 12-year marriage. But tonight, I slept peacefully for the first time in years, no longer carrying the weight of a secret that had become too heavy to bear. The truth, I'd discovered, didn't always set you free immediately. Sometimes it trapped you first, forced you to sit in the wreckage of your own making, and only then, only after you'd faced what you'd built and what you'd hidden, did it offer liberation. I'd take it. God help me. I'd take it with both hands and never look back. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the hotel suite, casting geometric patterns across the custom hardwood floors. I'd slept better than I had in months, waking without the familiar weight of pretense pressing down on my chest. My phone showed 43 missed calls and 67 text messages. I ignored them all and ordered breakfast. The San Jose presentation was at 10. I had 3 hours to shower, dress, and remind myself who I really was. Not the woman who'd played small for 12 years, but the architect who'd transformed skylines and reimagined urban spaces. My assistant Jennifer called at 8. Ms. Chen, I have your ex-husband in the lobby of the office. He's insisting he needs to speak with you before the presentation. Ex-husband. The words felt strange and premature, though technically accurate in spirit, if not yet in law. Tell him I'll meet him after the presentation, I said. And Jennifer? Make sure security knows he's not to interrupt the meeting under any circumstances. Understood. Also, Maya wanted me to tell you that the clients arrived early. They're excited about the revisions you sent last week. The revisions I'd stayed up until 2 in the morning perfecting, while Marco slept soundly in our bed, never asking about my work, never curious about the blueprints spread across my home office desk. I arrived at Chen Design Associates at 9:30, walking through the glass doors of the building I'd purchased 6 years ago. The firm occupied 3 floors of prime downtown real estate, with 52 employees and satellite offices in Portland and San Francisco. Marco had been here exactly twice in 12 years, once for a holiday party, once when his car was in the shop and he needed a ride. Diane. Marco stood from one of the modern chairs in our reception area, looking haggard. He'd clearly not slept. Please. Just 5 minutes. I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time without the filter of pretense. He was handsome still, but there was a weakness around his mouth I'd never let myself see before, a petulance in his eyes when he didn't get his way. 5 minutes, I agreed. In my office. He followed me to the elevator, past the wall displaying our firm's awards and featured projects. His eyes widened as he took it in. The recognition, the prestige, the undeniable evidence of success he'd somehow never bothered to investigate. My office occupied the corner of the top floor, with views of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains. The walls displayed original renderings of my designs, architectural photography from projects around the world. My degrees from MIT and the fellowship certificate from the University of the Philippines. This is... Marco trailed off, turning slowly in the center of the room. This is incredible. Yes, I said simply, sitting behind my desk, a custom piece made from reclaimed wood from a building I'd helped preserve. You have 4 minutes. I'm sorry. The words came out rushed, desperate. Diane, I'm so sorry. I was an idiot, a complete fool. I let my pride and my family's expectations blind me to who you really are. No, I corrected gently. You let your assumptions blind you. I gave you 12 years to ask questions, to be curious, to wonder about the woman you married. You never did. Because I thought I knew. His voice rose, then fell again as he tried to control himself. You were so convincing. The modest lifestyle, the staying home, the truth, I interrupted. I never lied, Marco. I work from home because I own the company and I can. I dress modestly because my mother taught me that real wealth doesn't advertise. I drive a Honda because it's reliable and I don't care about impressing people. Everything you thought you knew about me was your own projection. The house, he said. You let me think I was helping pay for it. You let me feel like a provider. You were helping with utilities and groceries, I said. I never misrepresented what your money was for. And yes, I let you feel like a provider because that seemed important to you. More important than the truth. He sank into the chair across from my desk, his head in his hands. My mother won't stop crying. She keeps saying she's ashamed, that she can never face you again. She probably can't, I agreed. But that's not my burden to carry. I didn't make her judge me. I didn't make her cruel. I just stopped pretending I couldn't understand her cruelty. The condo. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. Are you really going to let them keep living there? I considered the question carefully. I haven't decided. The foundation has other uses for the property, other people who could benefit from safe housing. Your parents aren't in need. You've been sending them money. They have pensions. Your father's investments have done well according to my research. You researched my family's finances? He sounded more awed than angry now. I research everything, Marco. It's what makes me good at what I do. I glanced at my watch. You have 1 minute left. I don't want a divorce, he said quickly. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. We can start over. I can see you now. Really see you. We can build something real. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I felt the pull of 12 years of history. The good moments we'd shared, the laughter before the resentment built, the man I'd thought he might become. Marco, I said softly, what you're asking for isn't a second chance. It's a first chance with the real me, which means we'd essentially be strangers starting a relationship. Can you honestly say you'd have pursued me if you'd known the truth from the beginning? If you'd known I was successful and independent and didn't need you? His silence was answer enough. I'm not angry anymore, I continued. I was, for a long time, angry at you, at your family, at myself for the game I was playing. But now I'm just tired. Tired of being small. Tired of pretending. tired of wondering if someone loves me or loves the idea of me they've constructed. I do love you, he whispered. You love who you thought I was, I corrected. And I don't blame you for that, but I can't build a future on it either. Jennifer knocked on the door. Ms. Chen, the clients are ready. Thank you. I stood, smoothing down my suit, an elegant black Armani that I'd owned for years but never worn around Marco. I have to go. My lawyer will be in touch this week. Christina, Marco said suddenly as I reached the door. It wasn't. We never actually. It doesn't matter, I said, and realized I meant it. Whether you slept with her or just thought about it, you were already gone. We both were. We've been living as strangers pretending to be married for years. It's time we stop pretending. The San Jose presentation went flawlessly. The clients, a development corporation looking to revitalize a struggling neighborhood, loved the design's blend of affordable housing and commercial space, the green roofs and community gardens, the way the buildings created gathering spaces while maximizing density. Ms. Chen, the lead client said as we concluded, this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. When can we break ground? 6 months for permits and final approvals, I said. Construction begins next spring. Maya caught my arm as the clients left. You were brilliant. Also, what the hell happened last night? You texted that the truth was out. Then radio silence. I'd known Maya since architecture school. She was one of the few people who'd always known exactly who I was, who'd watched me decide to hide myself from Marco with something between horror and fascination. I told them everything, I said. Showed them the deeds, the bank statements, the wire transfers for the condo. Spoke to them in Tagalog for the first time. Maya's eyes widened. Oh my God, how did they react? About how you'd expect. Shock, denial, anger. Marco wants to reconcile. His mother can't stop crying. His father probably wants to kill me. And you? I feel free, I said simply. Finally, completely free. My phone rang, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Ms. Chen, this is Dolores Martinez, Marco's mother. Her voice was formal, speaking in careful English. May I have a moment of your time? Of course, Mrs. Martinez. I would like to meet with you, today, if possible. There are things I must say, face to face, that I cannot say over the phone. I hesitated. The last thing I needed was more confrontation. But something in her tone made me agree. There's a coffee shop near my office, Cafe Allegro. I can meet you at 3. Thank you. I will be there. She was already seated when I arrived, looking smaller somehow than she had at dinner, less formidable. She stood as I approached, and to my shock, she bowed. A slight but unmistakable gesture of respect. Thank you for coming, she said. We sat. I ordered tea. She had coffee already going cold in front of her. I have been thinking all night and all morning, she began, her English more accented than usual, as if emotion was stripping away her fluency. About the things I said, the things I thought, the way I treated you. Mrs. Martinez, please, she held up a hand. Let me speak. I may not have another chance. She took a breath. I came to this country 40 years ago with nothing. My husband and I, we worked so hard, cleaning offices, working in kitchens, saving every dollar. We wanted our children to have better lives, to not struggle as we did. I nodded, understanding where this was going. When Marco married you, I thought he was making a mistake. A pretty American girl, but no family support, no obvious career. I worried you would hold him back, that he would have to work twice as hard to support you both. So you decided I was the problem, I said quietly. Yes. She met my eyes, her own brimming with tears. And I was wrong. So completely, terribly wrong. But it was more than that. I think. She paused, struggling with the words. I think I was jealous. Jealous. You had what I never had, she said. Education from a good school. A career you loved. The freedom to choose your life. I never had choices. I did what I had to do to survive, to raise my family. And seeing you, young and American and free, I made assumptions. Cruel assumptions. You thought I took my freedom for granted, I said, understanding. Yes, and I resented it. So I told myself you were lazy, that you were using my son, that you didn't deserve the life you had. She wiped her eyes. I convinced myself I was protecting Marco. But really, I was just angry at my own life, my own choices. It was perhaps the most honest thing anyone from Marco's family had ever said to me. I appreciate you sharing that, I said carefully. But it doesn't erase 12 years of cruelty. No, she agreed. It doesn't. Nothing can. But I wanted you to know. The condo, the money you sent, the way you took care of us while we insulted you. Her voice broke. That is the kind of grace I have never shown to anyone. You are a better person than I am, than any of us are. I'm not better, I said. I'm just different. I had different advantages, different struggles. My parents gave me opportunities your generation fought to give the next generation. That doesn't make me superior. But you used those opportunities, she said. You built something beautiful, and we tried to tear you down for it. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is every bank statement from the past 12 years. Every wire transfer you sent to the property management. I calculated it all. It's over $750,000 you've spent on us. The number didn't surprise me. I'd known roughly what I'd invested in their comfort. I cannot pay you back, she continued. Not in money, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what you did, and why it matters, and how badly we failed you. What do you want from me, Mrs. Martinez? I asked gently. Permission, she said. Permission to tell my children, my extended family, the truth. That we were wrong about you. That you were never the problem. That we should have seen your kindness, your generosity, your strength. You don't need my permission for that, I said. Yes, I do. She looked at me directly. Because if I tell them, they will ask about the condo. They will know you could take it away. And I need to tell them that you have every right to, that we have no claim to your charity after what we've done. I sat back, considering. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Recognition, acknowledgement, an admission that I'd been wronged. So why did it feel so hollow? Keep the condo, I said finally. The foundation will maintain ownership, but you can live there rent-free as long as you need it. Consider it my gift to the family I tried to be part of. Why? She asked, genuinely confused. After everything we did, why would you continue to help us? Because, I said slowly, working it out as I spoke, cruelty is easy. Revenge is easy. Walking away and cutting you off would be easy. But I built a career on creating spaces where people can thrive. I built a foundation to help families have security. Just because you were cruel doesn't mean I need to be. She started crying in earnest then, silent tears streaming down her face. I do not deserve your forgiveness. You probably don't, I agreed. But forgiveness isn't always about deserving. Sometimes it's about choosing not to carry anger anymore. You hurt me. All of you did. But I'm choosing to put that down now. Not for your sake, but for mine. Marco, she said after a moment. He wants another chance with you. I know. I can't give him that. I understand. She nodded. He needs to learn what I am learning now, that love is not about control or providing or being needed. It is about seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway. He'll find someone, I said. Someone who fits the life he wants to build, but that someone isn't me. We talked for another hour about her life in the Philippines, about her journey to America, about the dreams she'd had and the compromises she'd made. It didn't erase the hurt, but it added context, dimension, humanity to a woman I'd seen only as an adversary. When we parted, she hugged me, briefly, awkwardly, but genuinely. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for the condo, for this conversation, for being bigger than our smallness." "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Martinez," I said. "Dolores," she corrected. "Please, call me Dolores." The divorce proceedings took 4 months. Marco's lawyer tried initially to claim community property rights, but my documentation was airtight. Everything significant had been acquired before the marriage or maintained in my maiden name. In the end, he accepted a settlement of $100,000, more than fair given the circumstances. But I had no interest in being petty. "You're being too generous," Maya said when I told her. "He doesn't deserve anything." "Probably not," I agreed. "But I can afford to be generous, and he'll need something to start over. Consider it karma insurance." Christina, the secretary, had quit shortly after the separation became public. Raphael told me she'd been horrified to discover Marco had no money of his own, that the lifestyle she'd seen had been funded by the wife he'd planned to leave. There was a certain poetic justice in that. Raphael and I stayed in touch. He'd started working with the foundation, helping to identify housing needs in underserved communities. He had his grandfather's work ethic, but his generation's social awareness. A powerful combination. "You know," he said one day over lunch, "what you did changed our whole family dynamic." "Oh?" I was curious despite myself. "Mom's in therapy, actually dealing with her resentment and anger instead of projecting it. Dad's been more honest with his feelings. Even Carmela's pulled back on her judgment of people." He smiled. "You blew up our world, and it needed to be blown up." "What about Marco?" "He's dating someone new, another Filipina actually, but one who makes more money than he does. I think he finally understands that he was attracted to the idea of being superior, not to actual partnership." "I hope he's happy," I said, and meant it. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I attended the groundbreaking for the San Jose project. The sun was bright, the crowd enthusiastic, and as I stood with the golden shovel in hand, I felt completely, authentically myself. "Ms. Sackers, Chen," a reporter called out. "What inspired this design?" "The belief that everyone deserves beautiful spaces," I said. "That architecture shouldn't just serve the wealthy, but should elevate entire communities. This project will provide 300 units of affordable housing, 20,000 square feet of retail space, and a community center with job training programs. It's not just buildings, it's possibility." That evening, I returned to the house that had been the stage for so much deception. I'd considered selling it after the divorce, starting completely fresh. But as I walked through the rooms, the kitchen where I'd cooked elaborate meals, the living room where I'd endured countless insults, the bedroom where I'd slept beside a stranger, I realized I didn't want to run from it. This house was mine. It had always been mine. And now, finally, I could make it fully into the home I'd wanted it to be. I hired a crew to paint, to renovate, to transform the spaces. The guest room became a proper home office, with drafting tables and a wall of architectural books. The formal dining room became a casual breakfast nook. The garden got a complete redesign. Less formal, more wild, with a fire pit for gathering with friends. My mother came to visit after the renovations were complete. She walked through the house slowly, taking in every detail. "You did the right thing," she said finally, "hiding yourself to test him. I understand why you did it, but I'm glad you don't have to anymore. I'm glad too, I said, though I'm not sure I'd recommend the experience. 12 years is a long time to be someone you're not. You weren't someone you weren't, she corrected. You were always yourself. You just didn't show all the pieces. There's a difference. She was right, as mothers often are. I'd never lied about who I was. I'd just allowed others to see a limited view, to make assumptions, to fill in the blanks with their own projections. What now? She asked. New projects? New relationships? What does Diane Chen want for her next chapter? I thought about it. Really thought about it. For 12 years, I'd been so focused on the test, on observing, on waiting to see what would happen. I'd put my life on hold in some fundamental way, living in the space between truth and deception. I want to be known, I said, fully, completely, honestly known. I want to design buildings that matter. I want to love someone who loves the real me, not an illusion. I want to stop testing and start trusting. That's brave, my mother said. Scarier than hiding ever was? Terrifying, I agreed, but necessary. 1 year after the revelation, I was invited to speak at a Women in Business conference. The organizers wanted me to share my story, the one that had become somewhat public through the divorce proceedings and the architectural press. I stood on stage in front of 500 women and told them the truth. Not just about Marco and the deception, but about why I'd felt the need to hide, about the fear that my success would attract the wrong kind of attention, about learning the hard way that being underestimated was sometimes safer than being seen. I don't regret the test, I said, but I regret the time I lost being less than I was. I regret the opportunities I missed because I was playing small. I regret teaching someone that I needed them to be whole when I was already complete. The applause was thunderous, but the part that mattered came afterward. The women who approached me with tears in their eyes, telling me their own stories of hiding, of shrinking, of making themselves less to make others more. What would you do differently? One young woman asked. I thought about Marco, about his family, about 12 years of silence and observation. I'd trust myself sooner, I said. I'd trust that if someone couldn't love me at my full power, they weren't meant to be in my life. I'd trust that real love doesn't require you to diminish yourself. That night, I stood on the balcony of my real home, finally feeling like mine, and looked out at the city I'd helped shape. The Seattle skyline bore my fingerprints in 3 different buildings, with 2 more under construction. My foundation had housed 57 families in the past year alone. My firm was ranked among the top sustainable design companies in the nation. I'd built an empire while pretending to have nothing. I'd funded a family while being called a burden. I'd loved someone who never bothered to know me. But now I was just Diane, architect, philanthropist, daughter, friend. No longer hiding, no longer testing, no longer pretending that small was safe. My phone buzzed. A text from Raphael. Family dinner next week. You should come. Mom's cooking, and she wants to try to make things right. I stared at the message for a long moment. The easy answer was no. I'd been hurt, betrayed, mocked. I owed them nothing more. But easy answers were what I'd been choosing for too long. I'll be there, I typed back, but I'm bringing the wine. The good stuff this time. Because that was the thing about truth. Once you started living in it, you couldn't go back to the comfort of deception. You had to keep choosing honesty, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it would be easier to cut ties and walk away. Marco wouldn't be there. We'd agreed that boundary was important for both of us, but his family wanted to try, wanted to build something real on the foundation of painful honesty. Maybe it would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But at least this time, we'd all know exactly who we were dealing with. I raised my glass of wine to the city, to the sky, to the future I was finally ready to embrace. To truth, I said aloud, to no one and to everyone, to being seen, to being enough. The city lights twinkled back at me, indifferent and beautiful, a canvas I'd helped create and would continue to shape. Somewhere in those lights were people in buildings I'd designed, living lives I'd helped improve with thoughtful architecture and intentional space. That was legacy. Not the money, not the revenge, not the gotcha moment at the dinner table, but the work, the contribution, the way I'd used my resources to build rather than destroy. Marco had said I'd made them rats in my maze. Maybe he was right. Maybe my experiment had been cruel in its own way, but from that cruelty had come clarity, and from clarity had come freedom. Not just mine, but theirs too. Dolores was in therapy. Raphael had found his calling. Even Marco, according to reports, was learning to value partnership over superiority. As for me, I was learning to live out loud, to take up space without apology, to speak all my languages without hiding. I was learning that being understood was worth the risk of being known. My phone rang again. An unknown number. Ms. Chen? This is Patricia Wong from the Seattle Times. I'm doing a feature on women architects transforming the urban landscape. I'd love to interview you about your work and your philosophy. I'd be honored, I said. Great. Just one more thing. There's been some interest in your personal story, the divorce and the revelation about your wealth. Would you be willing to discuss that as well? I hesitated. The old Diane would have deflected, would have kept personal and professional separate, would have protected her privacy at all costs. But I wasn't the old Diane anymore. Yes, I said. I'll discuss it, because I think it matters. I think there are other women hiding themselves, and maybe hearing my story will help them stop. That's wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Please, I said, smiling at the city spread before me. Call me Diane. Because that was who I was now, who I'd always been beneath the layers of protection and pretense. Just Diane, speaking truth in all her languages, building spaces for people to thrive, living full and loud and completely herself. And finally, after 12 years of silence and 1 year of revelation, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.